Another day, another gimbal. Last week, Zhiyun announced a brand new gimbal, the new Weebill S. So in this video, we're gonna break things down. We're gonna be talking about what's different, what's new, what's the same. Should you get it or should you upgrade from an older gimbal? So to answer the most important questions right off the bat, just to get it out there really quickly, is this gimbal worth getting? Is it worth upgrading to? The answer is yes. We're gonna dive into the specifics throughout this entire video, but in summary, if you feel like you need a stronger gimbal, but in a small form factor, I believe the Weebill S fits that criteria. Despite the design and build being so similar to the previous Weebill Lab, it's a lot more versatile when it comes to the weight that it supports. It now works with the 24-70mm f2.8 and the 16-35mm f2.8, two insanely popular lenses people love to use on a gimbal because of their flexibility and versatility. However, because of the weight and size, you would need to use heavy-duty gimbals like the Crane 2 or the Crane 3 Lab to use these lenses, but the overall setup would be massive. But now, you don't have to. If you've been following this channel for a while now, I've made attempts with the heavier lenses on the older Crane, Crane Plus, and the previous Weebill Lab model. And the issues that I always run into was the setup not having enough clearance in the back, so it would always hit the motor. Another big issue was the fact that the gimbals wouldn't handle turns too well. But with the new Weebill S, there is enough clearance in the back and the stability is much better. So think of this as a mini Crane 2, but much more portable and much more transport friendly. Although I personally fly with smaller prime lenses and lighter zoom lenses, it's nice to know that I can slap on a bigger lens on a small gimbal. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into the specifics. Compared to last year's Weebill Lab, the Weebill S has a 300% motor torque increase and up to 50% faster response rate. Now, to be honest, I can't really measure that to prove it, but the difference can be felt. I've been using the Weebill S with the 24-70 G Master and the 16-35 G Master for the past month on a camping trip and on a wedding shoot. And it worked out really well. As mentioned earlier, there's enough clearance in the back now, so when you use longer and heavier lenses, the camera wouldn't hit the back of the motor. However, I would suggest using the riser plate. Without it, depending on the setup, the camera will hit the motor unless you take off the eyepiece. With the riser plate though, you won't have that issue. You can also zoom with the lens on this gimbal without having to rebalance the entire setup if you need to change focal lengths on the fly. However, by doing so, it will stress the motor and shorten the battery life. The trick to have this flexibility is by balancing the setup with the lens zoomed halfway out already, somewhere in the middle. That way you can zoom in or out without drastically shifting the weight and causing too much stress on your motor. So in keeping up with the trends of gimbals that got released in 2018, the motor here does not block the camera screen. And like the previous Weebill, this uses the MANFROTTO 501 quick release plate, meaning if you're using a MANFROTTO tripod that uses the same quick release plate, you can share the setup between the tripod and the gimbal. The Weebill S still supports the quick release tripod legs, so you can stand it upright when you're not using it, or use it in underslung mode, aka briefcase mode. And like the previous Weebill Lab, it is compatible with a follow focus system. Personally, I don't use it because I rely on the autofocus of the Sony cameras, but this is a useful piece of information to those who do plan on using a follow focus system on a gimbal. So let's talk about form factor really quickly. Form factor is a huge deal, and it's the biggest reason why I chose the previous Weebill Lab for my Japan trip last April. It is because it's so small. It's easy to pack in my suitcase, and the locking mechanism helps protect the gimbal from potential damages when transporting it around. And if you're coming from an older Crane, you will love the locking mechanism for sure. It also fits in most backpacks, such as the Peak Design Everyday Backpack, the Think Tank Airport Essentials, and the Think Tank Urban Access. Pretty much backpacks with deep pockets in general. In addition to form factor being so travel friendly, it also has the battery life to keep up with all-day shoots. 14 hours on a full charge. Now, here's a con with the design if you're using a camera without a flip-out screen. When you're using the gimbal in underslung mode, it would be hard to see the screen. Personally, I don't use this mode too often, but I know there are a lot of people that do, so it's important to keep this in mind. Moving on, gimbal tuning and adjustments can now be programmed within the gimbal menu itself. No smartphone needed. This is nice. Personally, I don't like to use my phone to make adjustments to any camera devices that I'm using, because Bluetooth and wireless connections can be finicky sometimes. Although it does work well 90% of the time, the connection process is a little slow. Having the adjustment built into the gimbal system is a nice user experience touch. You can change the speed of the pan, the follow and the tilt axis, and you can also change the speed of the joystick control. On top of that, you can also use the auto-tune feature directly from the gimbal itself without using your smartphone. And the auto-tuning pretty much just the gimbal figuring out its most optimal setting to handle the setup that you put on it. So the Weebill Lab also now supports its image transmission module, and this is coming soon, so stay tuned for an update video on this. But according to the website, the all-new Transmount image module transmission module in its compact size can be directly mounted under the quick release plate neatly. With 1080p 30 frames per second highly synchronized transmission, 100-meter distance, featuring LUT, pseudo-color, focus peaking, zebra stripes, and etc. Professional monitoring and live streaming can easily be achieved on a gimbal. Whew, that is a mouthful and doesn't make too much sense, but essentially it can transmit to a smartphone, an iPad, and even an external monitor. But with an external monitor, you will need a receiver module, which is also coming soon. Now, I don't see myself using this image transmission module too much, but I can see it being really helpful on a production set or on a film set. Oh, and last but not least, the price. So for the standard package, it's gonna cost you about $440 US, and that's only the gimbal only. But if you want the zoom and the focus module, the accessory, that's gonna run you about $520 US. With the image transmission module, that package is gonna cost you $680 US. And that image transmission pro package will also include the zoom and the focus accessory. I believe the pre-order is available now, and the standard package should be shipping out by the end of this month. As for the zoom and focus pro package as well as the image transmission, it's unclear when the specific dates are, but hopefully they will be out by the end of this year. So just to sum this all up, if you're planning on using heavier, longer lenses but you want a small gimbal, the Weebill S is definitely worth considering. However, if you plan on just flying with lighter prime lenses and lighter zoom lenses, then the Weebill Lab or even an older crane model is just fine. Let me know in the comments down below if you'll be pre-ordering the new Zhiyun Weebill S or if you're sticking to an older crane model. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!